Good afternoon. Doing another video here for Richard, and I just want to say it doesn't matter to me whether there are any viewers or not. I am making these videos for anybody that wants to join and listen to it, because I know that there are people out there that are experiencing the same thing I am, the loss of a beloved parent or beloved companion, as it was for me, for my lifelong companion. I'd been with Richard for almost half a century, to put it that way, almost 50 years. And I had been with him since I was maybe, I think, around 20 years old. And I'm going on 70 now. So we had a lifelong relationship, companionship, love companionship. And not to say that we didn't have our ups and downs like every couple. Not to say that we didn't have our little fights from time to time. Of course we did. But when you lose someone that is part of you, when you are one with that person, and no matter what's going on in your life, just having their presence there, even if you're not talking to that to your beloved one, if you're Richard sometimes would be busy doing his thing and I would be doing my thing, but just having his presence there was meant so much to me. It was always just a very good feeling. I remember many nights just sleeping peacefully, knowing that he was there. And it's a little bit different. I wouldn't say little. It's really big different when you lose that person. It's like half of yourself is buried in the grave with the one who passed. And but I was looking through some paperwork, and I looked at the medical examiner, and I knew he had heart problems, and what they listed was a heart failure attributed to what comes down to clogged arteries. And this really is a mystery to me, because we had a very good diet. We had been vegans for, I don't know, 40 years. And Richard wasn't like my dad was a whole different story. He had to have like 2 bypasses. And his diet just was not good. It was a high cholesterol kind of diet where he was eating all the wrong things, processed food, and things that would clog your arteries. But Richard and the both of us had a vegan diet, and I don't understand how his arteries could have got clogged. And then I was thinking, well, maybe some of it is genetic, because his father had heart problems and was on heart medication, probably medication that cut back on cholesterol. And I think his mom also did, although she had a problem with her lungs. She was an avid smoker. Bless her heart. She loved her cigarettes. And you know what? Richard hated cigarettes, and I stopped smoking. I had a phase where I smoked as a teenager, not for very long. I had a year or so, I would say from 18 years old, and then a little bit when I was going to college. Before I had to sit down and write a paper, I'd had to have my cigarette. It's just, habit kind of thing. But I quit that, and but I also understand why Mabi, his mother, enjoyed having her smokes. It was a way for her to relax. It was a way of um, calming things down for her, and that's uh, a big reason why, I don't know about men, but a big reason why women uh, rely sometimes on cigarettes as a kind of tranquilizer. And I think that's the way it was with Ma B, and it caught up to her at the end. But she still lived a fairly, she lived, I think, up in her 80s, if I remember, her early 80s, I would say. But I getting at that, I think both Richard's parents did have some heart problems, and it might have been genetic because his diet just didn't fit with clogged arteries. Now I know that he once in a while he would eat something that uh, maybe wasn't the best thing for cholesterol. Like, I we both loved Amy's enchiladas, and usually though we would get the enchiladas that had totally vegan, that had no cheese at all. But she started making a larger family size, and one of them was the lasagna, which is vegan. The lasagna one is vegan. There's not real cheese in it. But the other one is the cheese enchiladas, and I gotta admit, they are delicious. There's some of the dishes, some of the frozen Amy's that I don't care for, but uh, sh- whoever she hired to do the sauces, um, really, really good. And its quality, I mean, that company is, the basis of the foundation of that company is healthy, quality, vegan frozen. So, but once in a while, we would pop in the family size cheese enchiladas, and he loved those. And now I'm thinking, man, if I knew what I know now, I don't think I would even let him come close to those cheese enchiladas. If this is the case, that he really had a problem with clogged arteries. And I mean, I'm just going by the medical examiner's definition of how he died. Um, and I can't remember the long word for it, but I looked it up on Google, and it had to do with um, uh, clogged arteries, like very similar to what my dad had to have a bypass to clear that out. And then it also mentioned blood clot, and I wasn't here at the time when Richard went through something that was extremely painful. And Brett, his son, was a witness to it, and he was just rolling in pain. And oh, that would have just, I know that was hard for Brett to see, and it would have been devastating for me. I would have, I don't know what I would have done, but I know Brett tried to get him to the hospital. I know he tried with all his might, like, pleaded with his dad, please, please, let me either take you there or call an ambulance, because he had never seen his father in that kind of pain. And the reason it would be hard on him and me is Richard was always so strong, and he prided himself on his health and being strong. I was looking through some pictures back in high school when he was in military school, and he was standing with a number of his students, and it looked like it was a fun picture that they all took together. And they all looked like kind of like tough guys, right? Well, the one that looked out of, I would say there were about 20 boys in that picture, and the one that stood out was Richard, and he was right in the middle, and he was raising his arm, and the muscles on him. Uh, there were a couple other guys that looked strong, but nothing compared to Richard. He was always into lifting weights, and um, I mean, almost up to the day that he died, he always did some form of exercise. So I find this, how he died, kind of a mystery. I just don't understand how he could have possibly had clogged arteries. He was, like I said, when you're on a vegan diet for 40 years, how do you get clogged arteries? And then it said something about, it can also lead to blood clots. Well, this was a problem that his mother had. And if I remember, I forget the name of it, but they had to put in a stilt or something, I think that's what it's called, to prevent any blood clots from, going into the heart. Because if a blood clot goes into the heart or the brain, boom, you're done, you're finished. And I'm thinking, and I don't know if Brett might have thought about this too, but when I read that, I thought maybe that's what caused that horrible pain that night for him. Maybe he had a blood clot that was going through him. And then if the blood clot wasn't dissolved and it hit his heart, that would take him out. That would definitely take him out. And I know that, some people might think, well, why go over this? He's gone. What's the point of trying to figure it out, how he died? But I can't help it. I just want to know everything. I want to know everything that happened because I wasn't here. And I just kept thinking, how did this happen? I left, you were in pretty good spirits, you were feeling pretty well, and suddenly, I left October 6th, but by the time it got around October 23rd or so, he was going down. It wasn't good. That's when, it took a turn for the worst for some reason. And so I don't know. I just was trying to figure out like how this happened. And I know Brett and we both tried to get him to a cardiologist, and there's really, I would say that there's a good possibility that if he had just bit the bullet, as much as he hated doctors, as much as he hated going to a hospital, if he had just got on maybe the right medication, he might be alive today. Because the reason why his father lived all the way to 90, he was taking the right medication that would prevent any heart disease or heart problem that controlled cholesterol or whatever. I mean, these medications, a lot of people complain about Big Pharma, and I understand all the reasons for that, but it was the medications that kept my mom alive all the way up to 97. And Richard never wanted to take any pharmaceuticals. And there's a good chance that even if if he went to the doctor and the doctor prescribed the medications that would reduce or whatever problems that were going on in his arteries or whatever, whether it was a cholesterol problem or there's a good chance that Richard wouldn't have taken them. If I know Richard, there's a good chance he just wouldn't. He just didn't trust pharmaceuticals, and he didn't trust doctors, and he definitely did not want to go into the hospital, especially the ER. So this was what he chose, and he chose to try to do it on his own, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out where he could pull it off by himself. It did on the first episode. I was really amazed how he got back to total normal uh, when his heart rate went way up. Um, but whatever happened somewhere in mid-October, it came back, and it came back much worse than the first round that he experienced. And I, I just wish sometimes that he would have been a little bit more understanding about doing something more to save himself. Um, if not for himself, then for Brett and for me. But you know, to each his own. And I have to respect that. Um, and the other thing I wanted to talk about with Richard is I mentioned that he went to military school and how strong he was really almost all his life up until this last year or so. Now, as you get into your 80s, of course you're going to experiences changes in your body. That's only natural. And I thought that's all that was going on. Okay, you're 85, you're going to slow down, you're not going to be as strong as you used to be. And that just goes with the territory of aging. But I had no idea that whatever was going on with him would actually lead to death. I mean, that part of it, I'm still in shock over it. But he was always, there was a part of Richard, maybe it came from the military training, that he was kind of a Clint Eastwood kind of tough guy. And if you crossed a moral line with him, watch out. He would either just not have anything more to do with you, or um, he had this stoic, almost kind of what I call, kind of cold side, that if he turned on you, that there was no going back. And I saw this with his sister Leslie. She just there were some things that happened and he got very upset about it, and he just didn't want to talk to her. He just like cut her off. And I tried to talk him out of it. I tried to tell him, look, she's your sister, and but he was